Hello, this is a podcast in response to a question from Steve Diver, who has asked, how do we get from Rudolf Steiner's ideas to a circle and the work that I do with circles? So what I'm going to do is sort of outline the process that I went through to get to working with circles. This is based upon Rudolf Steiner's Goethean science, and this is an interesting question as to how does one generate new information. So rather than just following the lead and working with other people's information, Goethean science offers us the opportunity to generate new information and test that information in the real world and, in a sense, establish new truths. And so, when I first went to Emerson College, I was fascinated by the other tutors there. They were saying, we're not so interested in what your information is, but how did you get it? How did you come to this new information? Because, much of my work is new. It's innovative. It's pushing into new areas of understanding and new areas of application. And so it's, how did I come to this? And of course, this brings us to the very essence of Rudolf Steiner's Goethean scientific method. And so this method, as I understand it, is really a process whereby we gather all of the existing information that we have, and then with our feelings and with our imagination, we then live with that information and sort of ask questions and follow the answers that we get out of this process. And one of the first things that we get when we're looking at Rudolf Steiner's information is that we're following this idea of as above, so below. And so the first step is to look above and see what's there. Now, as a reference for this, I would like to bring your attention to this document on my website, which is the picture book that I've done that is called The Organisation of Matter Pictures. So when you go to my Glenopathy website, which is garudabd.org, you'll see on the front page in the recent editions, Organisation of Matter Pictures. And so I suggest that you print that out for yourself, at least download it and keep it as a PDF. And the pictures that I'm going to be referring to in this document. Now, of course, once we come to as above, so below, then we sort of look at astronomy and deal with a few of the realities that really meet us in astronomy. And probably the first place we can go is picture number 10 in this document, and this is the picture I call Layers of Creation. Now, in this picture, we're just looking at what there is, and when we start with this, we really have to start with the Earth below our feet. And we look out from the Earth and we see, of course, that it is an electromagnetic being, and that around the physical body of the earth we have this energetic body that we call the atmosphere. And it's within this atmosphere that we find all the elements of earth, fire, water and air, manifesting in the processes of warmth and light and moisture and physical substance that we have around us. And within this atmosphere we can find these four elements of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen and carbon in their various gas forms. Now, these are the four elements, of course, that Rudolf Steiner indicates are the physical carriers of these energetic activities that he talks about. Now, the wonderful thing of the atmosphere is that we know that it resonates at what we call the Schaumann resonance, which is around 7.8 hertz, which is the same as our resonance. The physical bodies of humans resonate around this 7.8 hertz as well. So we have this intimate connection between our life processes and these life processes of the atmosphere. And of course, it's within the atmosphere that we have this concentration of oxygen that's been given to us by the life processes of the earth, and particularly the life processes of the oceans, as well as from the plant life that is on the surface of the earth as well as in the oceans. This has released all of this concentrated oxygen to a point of about 20% of our atmosphere, the rest being predominantly nitrogen. And so this is the living sphere that we have around us, the atmosphere. And then we look out from the atmosphere and we see that we're just one planet, and this one planet is part of a solar system. And it's quite important to acknowledge that within the solar system we have the sun, which is a great big hydrogen and helium reactor that is an active nuclear reacting being. And then we have the planets. And the planets are various forms, but basically they depend upon the sun. The planet's existence is secondary to that of the sun. Now, all of these planets line out along a horizontal plane and find their being within the energetic body of the sun. And so this is what the solar system is. It's really the energetic body of the sun as such. And the sun is a star. And then when we look out beyond our solar system, we come to the galaxy. And that the galaxy is, in a sense, very similar to the sun in that there's this horizontal plane that we can see and observe. But instead of this horizontal plane being made up of planets, it's actually made up of stars. And so our star is just one of many, many, many millions of stars that go to make up our galaxy. And of course, this galaxy is just one of millions of other galaxies that go on within the cosmos. And so instead of focusing on this cosmic reality of many galaxies, I'm quite happy to focus on our galaxy as being our organized being that we live within. And so we can see that we have this galaxy, which is a star being, a solar system based around a star, but with planetary activity taking place. And on our planet, we can see that we have this atmosphere around us. And so these are these four great energetic spheres that we live within. These are real things. And so these are the four basic energetic realities that Rudolf Steiner talks about. The physical, of course, is a physical body. The atmospheric energetic activities we can call the etheric activity. the planetary spheres we identify as these astral activities, and the galactic sphere, where all the stars are, these are what we call the world spirit sphere. And so these are the astronomical reality of these four basic activities that then play into life and become the sort of basic energetic structure for life. And so when we look at those pictures, we can see that we have the first picture on the left, which is all of the constellations, being the galaxy. The blue spiral are the planets, and then the green spiral is the atmosphere where the elements exist. And then, of course, right in the middle, we have the Earth as a red dot, the Earth. Now, from the Earth has come these living beings. And so this is, of course, what all the kingdoms of nature are, and, of course, ourselves. And so what we can see is that within this atmospheric sphere of the Earth, we have living beings, and they manifest as male and female. And from that male and female, we then give birth to these internalized physical bodies. And so these are the other two spheres that exist between the Earth and the atmosphere. We have this duality of life beings, and then we have the physical bodies that are manifest. Now, we can look later into each of the kingdoms of nature to see how these four energetic activities manifest within the physical bodies. But it's important at this point just to acknowledge this is what there is. This is the structure of life that we observe once we look out and look at the as above. Because, of course, this is astronomy. When we look out and acknowledge these spheres of activity, this is the astronomical reality. But once we turn around and look at how these astronomical realities are playing into the internal reality, this is where we come into astrology. So astrology is applied astronomy. And therefore, any study that is looking at how the above is working onto the below comes under the sphere of this very large subject called astrology. And of course, this is what biodynamics is doing. Biodynamics is observing how the above is working into nature, both into the soil, into the plants, animal, and also into the human kingdom. Normally, we just identify astrology as being related to humans. This is quite a narrow interpretation, and really astrology is all study that looks at how the above is looking into the below. Now, as we come into Rudolf Steiner, we can look at these different layers of manifestation that we see in this diagram. And it was from looking at these 6 layers that I developed the next picture on page 14 of this book, and this came to what we call biodynamics decoded. Because when we're studying Rudolf Steiner, we come to the realization that he talks about a pattern, and he calls this pattern the organization of 2-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold, 7-fold, and 12-fold activities. Now, when we look into this picture in greater detail, essentially he's describing the as above. He's describing as a unity the earth, It can be the Earth, it can be the Sun, it can be a nucleus of an atom, it can be the centre of a galaxy. However you want to look at this unity, this is this central point of something. And initially we identify this as being a vortex, and that the spiral and the vortex becomes this primary organizational structure of movement. As soon as we get movement, we start to get the organisation through spirals and into vortexes, and out of that initial thought of following into the vortex, we come to this idea of the biodynamic decoded vortex, so that initially we have unity, then we have the duality of the sun and the moon processes, and this moves us between male and female, conscious and unconscious processes, and of course in biodynamic agriculture this is where we come into this divide into summer and winter, midday into the evening, and of course the preparations of 501 for this male sun preparation and 500 as this female afternoon preparation. And we can follow these two things, one into being an expansive process and the other into being more contractive and consolidating. And so we get this sort of primary polarity taking place here. Now, as this polarity moves with regards to each other, we have this male and female poles, and they come together to form the sun, to form the child, as it were, and create this middle space. And so in Rudolf Steiner's image, we're now moving into the physical body, and when we come to this physical body, we see the fixed pole of the nerve sense pole and the cardinal pole as the as the metabolic pole. And so these two poles work together. The pole from the head and the pole from the belly work together to create this middle sphere that we identify as the lungs and the heart working together to create the rhythmic system. And so this is the structure of the physical bodies that we identify. And as this continues to complex, we get that middle sphere breaking up again. And as we move out into the atmosphere, we identify this middle sphere as really this interplay between the air and the water elements, and the poles are the fire and the earth. So we get this fourfold activity really starting to show up. Now, it's an interesting point here that when we get movement, we start to get polarization. This is what we identify, that as soon as we get any kind of movement in creation, we get this polarization between a positive and a negatively charged element. And so once we come into life and we come into movement, we start to see that this poles of the nerve sense and the metabolic system polarize against each other. And so the elements of fire and earth polarize just as the elements of air and water polarize. And so once we get this polarization taking place, we really have to start looking at this symbol of a cross, and that we start to have a vertical axis manifesting in this polarity between the fire and earth, and we have the horizontal axis starting to manifest across the middle, and this is where we have air and water polarizing in the rhythmic system. And so as soon as we come into this image of movement and the fourfold activity, we really are being forced into looking at the cross as a symbol that we need to meet. And of course, this then becomes this fundamental structure of all organisms, where we have a vertical axis with a horizontal middle sphere that occurs. Now, interestingly, we come across this picture when we look above again, and we start to look at what is the essential organisation of all of these beings that we find in space, be it a planet, be it a galaxy. What is that structure? And what we come to is that this structure is actually an energetic gyroscope, so that it's not just a vortex. The vortex is really just part of what is actually a gyroscope. So on we go from that point of a thought, is that what is a gyroscope, and how does that organise itself? And so, of course, at this point, we're moving from this vortex shape through into a spherical form, because, of course, all things in creation are energetic spheres. And the question then arises that with this image of biodynamics decoded, we're organising all of the biodynamic information into this vortex structure. But how do we then move this vortex structure and all of the information that's within that vortex structure into a gyroscope? And this then became the next thought to follow, was that if we look at the water element, let's say, in this diagram, we've got there a statement of it being a nurturing and an emotional element, but it's governing the etheric body. It's carrying that as a cosmic etheric body, a world etheric body, an internalized etheric body. It's the chemical ether that is working somewhere in this whole story. We can identify it as being part of the plants, the oxygen. When we're looking at how the oxygen works, we have to look at how humus is functioning. Then Rudolf Steiner uses terms like cosmic calcium, earthly forces. There's these the constellations, the water constellations is governed by this thing. So within that sort of water area on the biodynamics decoded, there's actually a whole lot of different manifestations of this water element, and so it then becomes, how do we divide those all up and put them into their appropriate place within the gyroscope, as it were. And so we then come into looking at, well, how is the gyroscope organised? And this is where we move into the next diagram of page 15 of this book. And we have to follow that same line of thinking that we did before, that we start off with the galaxy, as it were, and we see that it's a spinning gyroscope, so there's a vertical axis and a horizontal plane, and of course we also have to be aware of the electromagnetic sort of spherical qualities of the gyroscope. And of course, in the modern context, people talk a lot about the torus, and this is that form, the donut form that manifests around the horizontal plane. But we can't lose sight of the vertical axis, of course, that's occurring in this process. Now, not only do we actually have the sphere, but we have those 6 layers within the sphere that we need to be conscious of, that we identified with our vortex. And so again, we sort of come to this point of looking at those 6 layers. But once we get movement, you'll remember, we actually get this polarization of activity that occurs. And so while we can see that we have the spirit in opposition to the world physical activities. And so this is like these mythologies where we have the Sky Father and the Earth Mother coming together to create that middle space where the etheric and the astral can interplay so that life and beings can manifest on the horizontal plane. Is quite an important question to look at, which is, where is life in a gyroscope? And of course, when we follow that question, we have to go, well, we are life, and we are on the Earth, and the Earth is on the horizontal plane of the solar system gyroscope, and of course the Sun is on the horizontal plane of the galactic gyroscope. And so life manifests on the horizontal plane. And so this is, in this interplay between the etheric and the astral activity, we have this sustaining of life. And that's why life, in a sense, manifests, in this etheric body. The etheric body becomes the sustaining quality of life, and that this doesn't really incarnate until stage 4, the fourfold process. That's where we start to see life being maintained. And so we can look at where Rudolf Steiner talks about this gyroscopic structure. And this is in this series of lectures that Rudolf Steiner gave in October of 1922, and in particular in the third lecture on the 27th of October 1922 in this course called Fundamentals of Anthroposophical Medicine. Now, in there, he's talking about the organisation of the physical body, and he talks about how in the metabolic processes we have the physical and the etheric body working strongly through the metabolic system, the astral and the etheric working through the rhythmic system, and in the nerve sense system we have the astral and the spirit working very, very strongly. And so in that lectures he basically describes this picture, the fourth picture on the right-hand side of gyroscopic agriculture, and so he's basically giving us this structure of the way these activities work together. Now, while we're looking at that picture, it's quite important to identify that we actually have 2 crosses that we can identify within this gyroscope. That we have this primary cross of the vertical and the horizontal axis, but then in between that we have a secondary cross. And over time I came to realise that this is the internal cross. This is where all the internal activities sit within the gyroscopic structure. And the vertical and horizontal cross is the world activities. These are these activities of the galaxy and the solar system and the atmosphere and the Earth. And then when they incarnate, this is where we find those activities on that secondary cross. And when you look through history, you'll find that this basic circular diagram with an octagon or a double cross process within it can be found in all religions and all faiths, and even in Christianity. You'll find right up into the 19th century that the crosses on all churches have this double cross shown within it. And this is what it's talking about. It's talking about the world activities, that are dominant in the organisation of the internal activities. And so it's really with this diagram and with this process that we start to see that we can get Rudolf Steiner's ideas and put it into a circular process. Now, initially, of course, I looked at this as being a simple artistic device, just as a way of understanding Rudolf Steiner's concepts. However, as time has gone on, I've come to see that this is actually a truly archetypal patterning, and that this archetypal patterning has truth. Now, basically it has truth because we've followed the as above. So if we really look into as above, so below, then we really have to get it that as above is an archetypal law, and that the patternings and the organisation that we find in the as above, when we apply it to the below, we have an archetypal truth that we can follow. Now, the question really starts to come, how do we get all of that information out of Biodynamics Decoded and bring it into this circular picture? Now, one of the big points of the Biodynamics Decoded picture is that everything on that picture is in some way an expression of the energetic body interactions. And you need to just think about that for a minute. But that is the challenge, is when we're talking about the light ether, we have to actually consider what is that? What is the energetic reality of the light ether? And of course we come into the agriculture course and we can see that Rudolf Steiner talks about a living and a dead ether. And so he's identifying two types of light ether, not just light ether, but a living light ether and a dead light ether. Dr. Steiner also talks about this differentiation of living and dead ethers as bound ethers and free ethers. And we'll see in a minute how the bound ethers are those that are in living forms, and the free ethers are those active in the world sphere. And when we look into that, we actually see that we have, in a sense, an incarnated light ether and an excarnated light ether. And so this is very, very interesting that we're looking at the light ether in itself as well, and we come first of all to the understanding that the light ether is actually where the let's put it this way: the dead light ether is where the cosmic and world astral activities, which is actually planetary influences. So the world astral is really the solar system. So where these world astral activities work into the world etheric body, which is the atmosphere of the Earth. The world etheric is the atmospheric sphere around the Earth. So where the planetary activities work into the light processes that are active within the Earth's atmosphere, this is what we have as the dead light ether. This is where the astral activities of the planets is working into the atmosphere. Now, when those activities of the astral body work into the living, internalized etheric body of a being, be it a plant or a human, this is where we have the living light ether. The living light ether is the planetary activities incarnated into a physical body through the internalized astral body, and that internalized astral activity works into an incarnated etheric body within a physical organism, and this is where we have the living light ether. And so how do we represent all that within a picture? So every bit of that biodynamics decoded needs to be translated into its energetic activity, and then we need to be able to put that into some sort of order. Now, interestingly, what we have then is that everything Rudolf Steiner talks about is some kind of energetic interaction. As I said, with this living light ether, it's where the astral is working into an etheric activity. And so we also have the etheric working into an astral activity. We have the spirit working into the physical. We have the spirit working into the etheric. So we have all these different interactions that we can talk about and find within Rudolf Steiner's literature. And so as an artistic device, I initially got the third picture along the top of this gyroscopic agriculture picture. And these are the cosmic activities. This is what is actually taking place in the cosmic sphere. I do have it written as world physical and world etheric and so on. However, this is both the cosmic and the world. So these are above us. These are outside ourselves. And so we then get the activities, these same activities, once they start moving, they start spinning, and once they start spinning, they polarize and then internalize into living forms. And so if we get picture number 4 and place it over picture number 3, we get the bottom left picture on this diagram, and this shows us all of the different interactions between all of the energetic activities. We can now go and we can look at what is the internalized spirit arm, and we can look and see where is the point where this internalized spirit is working into the internal astral, or where is it working into the internal etheric. And so by using that basic vortex structure that we had in Biodynamics Decoded, we can identify in the circle where each of these interactions are occurring. And so the picture on the right-hand side of that is then all of the terminology that Rudolf Steiner uses in the agriculture course to indicate these different energetic activities. And so this picture of gyroscopic agriculture is quite an important one to be able to identify the energetic activity of anything Rudolf Steiner talks about within the agriculture course. And so this picture becomes the glossary that we have for the agriculture course. Now, initially, of course, this is really just a very pleasant artistic device that we're using here, and so it just facilitates the glossary for the agriculture course. However, it's been developed upon the archetypal order of creation. So we've just followed the simple lines of thought of as above, so below, and then what is above, and then when we look below, we can then organise all of our information according to that organised form of above, which comes to Biodynamics Decoded, and then we take that one step further and just look what happens when that as above information moves into life, polarizes, and then organizes itself according to the gyroscopic structure of the above. The above is a gyroscopic form. It's not just a vortex form as normal traditional astrology would tell us. We have to move it on from that vortex form into the gyroscope. And so the process that I've followed by just simple observation is thus giving us this archetypal structure of the gyroscope. Now, this is a very interesting phenomena because, of course, our culture has been using circles for a very, very long time. And we can see this in structures like Stonehenge, and of course, as time goes on, we're finding all over the world these megalithic circles that were formed by humanity, and this has gone on into forming temples and stupas in Asia, right the way through to mosques in the Islamic culture, and of course churches. Initially, we can see the best form of gyroscopic churches in Eastern Orthodox through the Greek culture, the Russian culture, and of course Western European Christianity. They started off with octagonal and circular temples, and then they've moved into what we call the Italian cross, where they have added an extra piece onto the western side of the octagonal churches, and created this unequal sort of crucifix cross image. The question is why? Why has humanity made all of these circular buildings and created these geometric cathedrals? And my reasoning for this, of course, is that circles are organizational devices, and that if you make an earth circle, then you are creating something that is able to resonate in harmony with all the other energetic spheres in creation, which is everything from atoms through to galaxies, and that within that circle you will have the organization, the harmonic organizational structure of creation within those circles. And when you talk to Islamic people, Buddhists, and so on, that's what they will tell you, is that by these buildings, these patterns, every Persian carpet has this organizational structure imaged within it, and they just tell you that this is the image of universal harmony and order. Now, the problem is that for most cultures, we've lost that order. We've lost the understanding of that order. And so, therefore, these are just really nice pictures. And so what I'd like to present to you is that the order that is shown in this gyroscopic agriculture picture is, in fact, the order of circles. Now, in my own work, I've gone on into chemistry and followed the thought that if there is a universal order, then chemistry, which is really just a manifestation of creation, has to organize according to this same order. And by following up on the work of Dr. Hauschka in Nature of Substance and just following the logical process, then we come to these pictures that are, later on in this book of biodynamic chemistry, and then by being able to collect these particular chemical elements out of using bark flower remedy methodology, where we're using a silica glass or bottle filled with water, and then placing it in a circle at a particular element. I'm now quite convinced that the organisational pattern that I've identified here is indeed the archetypal organisational pattern of a circle, and so this is what we can now use. We can use this information. We can collect remedies out of the circle. If, of course, the organisation of the circle is an electromagnetic reality, and so the best way to connect to that is to use the Earth's magnetic field. And so when we line a circle up, we want to line the north point of the electromagnetism to the top of the circle, and we want to have the east point facing to the etheric arm, and so in fact these circles that I've drawn here with the gyroscopic agriculture, these are all being based off a northern hemisphere tradition, and so that has us facing to the south, and therefore the etheric is on our left hand facing to the south, but of course the magnetics is magnetic north, and so we actually have to spin this chart around and face to the north. And so later in the book you will find that all of my diagrams are based off this north magnetic pole. And so all of the picture, or most of the pictures dealing with the chemistry are orientated this way, and so there's this sort of switch of orientation that needs to happen. This for me happened around 2010, and so all of my diagrams after 2010 are focused on the north orientation, whereas all of the diagrams prior to that are all orientated off the ecliptic as seen in the northern hemisphere, which is facing to the south. So that's why there's this change of orientation in my pictures. Okay, so this is the thought processes that I have basically gone through to move Rudolf Steiner's information from what could quite simply be identified as a vortex, and moved it into a circle, but of course ultimately that has to go into a sphere as well. And while I have not done that with the actual information, I have done that with chemistry. And so you can see in my three-dimensional chemistry pictures how we can move all of this information into a spherical form as well. Okay, so I hope this has been not too complex, and that by looking at those diagrams along with the story that I'm telling, that it's possible for you to see how we can move Rudolf Steiner into a circular process. Please feel free to ask any questions you'd like at any time. My email address is Garuda, Garuda, at extra.co.nz. Ask me any questions anytime you like, and please look further into my work. Thank you. Goodbye.